Welcome to the August edition of Cornerstone Presents. Hi, I'm Richard Montez, and welcome to Čakovec, Croatia. I just arrived here 4 days ago to begin production on a new show that we're going to do here, a new musical. But I want to show you all that the Lord did last month in Korea as we presented a show for the American military. Here's a short report.
I left Kazakhstan and landed in Seoul, Korea. My luggage, however, was MIA and would be lost for 3 days. Still, it was great to be back in Korea as I felt so at home here, and the beautiful Korean landscape and weather made it for a nice time. I was also excited to get to work on this project that we had been working on for 1 year. Reality hit, however, as I realized that very little had been done to prepare for the show, including a place for me to stay. Mr. Lee, a real estate businessman, had graciously volunteered to help us. He found me a place to stay in a hotel near the Air Force Base. When I got here, almost nothing had been done in 1 year. So instead of working on the artistic side of the production, I found myself doing the work of the producer and typing out several letters to different groups asking for help and for their sponsorship. The promotions weren't ready, nor was the theater, nor the buses, or the support for the arriving American group, such as where they'd stay, what they'd eat, or how they'd get around, and worst of all, there were no funds with which to work. We had a lot of work to do. Finally, to make matters worse, due to a change in military personnel, all the military support we were counting on was gone. We were essentially starting over with no time. Next, I got an email from a woman who was supposed to be heading up the children's choir. She decided to drop out because she didn't have time. The show was falling apart around me. It was a desperate first week. At the same time, the Lord was at work. Mr. Lee, who for some unknown reason was helping us, and as I had never met him prior to this trip, he introduced me to some of the area pastors so that I could present my case for the production. Pastor Nelson Chapman of Songtan Baptist let me speak to the church to recruit children, and the parents came through. Pastor Jeremy Rogers, shown here, also from Songtan Baptist Church, helped in so many different ways. I went with Mr. Lee to the Yichung Cultural Center, and we signed off on it. Imagine, we have no financial support for buses, or for the theater, or for the hotel. We were asking favors from literally everyone. It was finally time for my American actors to arrive, so Sasha, one of my Ukrainian sons, joined me at the airport and we met them together. It was so good to see them and to escort them to the hotel. We had a short meeting, then we went to eat a typical Korean meal, and then I let them go to sleep. The next day we visited Yoido Church, and I was able to greet my friend and wife of Dr. Youngi Cho, Kim Sunggae Cho, and took a tour of the church. After lunch, the actors went to take a tour of Gyeongbokgung Palace. We came home and I let them rest, and Monday we would begin our work. Well, I taught them the entire staging for the show in just 3 days. Imagine that. It was finally time to move into the theater, and we were excited. All the curtains, the sets, the lights, the sound, and the workers, and yes, the cast and myself were all scheduled to arrive at 9 a.m. When we got there, we were not allowed in. Apparently, the letter granting us permission to use the theater from City Hall never came. The man who issued the letter is on vacation, and the letter could not be found, and until it was, we could not use the theater, so we were left outside. I had the actors pray, and I then shared with the group the trouble that I'd had in Kazakhstan and how we were stopped just 1 month earlier from setting up the day before the show. I told them that this was now happening to us, and so that we needed to pray through this month. Just as we stood to do spiritual warfare, Mr. Lee walked in and said, "Everything's fine, you can go set up." It was so perfectly timed that it looked staged. Thank you, Lord. We spent the day setting up and practicing on the stage and getting the kids ready for the show. The children had done a great job learning 3 songs and dances in just 5 days. Well, the day of the show was finally here. That morning I prayed and I prepared. So we began our run-through, and everything went surprisingly well. Everyone was dressed and ready to go early. The Friday night show was beautiful, although we had mic problems at first performance. The audience was smaller than expected, but they were enthusiastic and complimentary. The cast spent time on Saturday shopping in many Korean stores looking for souvenirs to take back to the United States. On Saturday night, the show went off well, and good thing, as it was being recorded for DVD and for television. The group sounded great and they looked great. The confetti cannons and the balloon drop went off well. The military men and women in attendance loved the show. Everyone was so happy, especially me. I was happy because the show was beautiful, the Lord was glorified, and as one of the unofficial producers of the show, we had enough to pay everyone off. That was great. We took cast pictures and then took lots of individual shots. I was so proud of the group. We went to dinner afterwards to celebrate. I am thankful to Jim Dunnett for inviting me, and especially to Mr. Lee for coming to our rescue. The Lord provided for 100% of all our needs. Thank you, Lord. The next day, on Sunday, was our last day together. Had the time really gone so quickly? I thank my precious actors. I fell so in love with this small group of artistic and talented and spiritual warriors. I said goodbye and was escorted to the airport by dear friends Gretel, David, and Sasha. They took me to the airport and I hugged them goodbye, and I flew on to Moscow, Russia, then onward to Croatia, where we would hold auditions on Monday and Tuesday, as well as cast Joseph. Wednesday, we set up for a performance of The Judgment Seat for the citizens of Zaprešić, Croatia. We had a large, enthusiastic crowd ready for the show to begin, and true to the Lord's nature, He came through and helped us with a beautiful show, even though we had no rehearsal. Afterwards, I was able to challenge the audience during the altar call, and the people responded beautifully to the message of the gospel.
Well, as you can see, it was a crazy time in Korea, and then just 2 days later, to do a performance of The Judgment Seat here in Croatia, we've been pretty busy. Well, that wraps up this month's edition of Cornerstone Presents. For more information, you can log on to www.cornerstonearts.com. By the way, the building that you see behind us, this is the Pastoral Center here in Čakovec. It's where all the churches come together to meet to do great things for God. But did you know that it's my personal home? I live here alone. Isn't that amazing? So keep us in prayer for Joseph as we're working every day with singers and dancers to get everybody ready for a great outreach. Well, that's it. For Cornerstone Presents, I'm Richard Montez.